Handbags, one cash.
Oh, I know what it is.
These 14 people aged over 65 are enjoying their weekly lunch club. They do it every Thursday at the King's Centre in Sheffield. For them, 3 hours of chatting, good homemade food and games are the best way to stay active and at the same time avoid being lonely. But for more than 1 million elderly people in UK, loneliness is still one of the main problems of getting older. According to a research made by the organization Campaign to End Loneliness, it is estimated that over half of all British people aged 75 and over are living alone. Near 200,000 elderly people don't get any help or assistance to get out of their home, and half of all older people in UK say the television is their main company. However, loneliness is an abstract concept, which makes it harder to define and understand. If we look at an English dictionary, it will tell us that it is a state of mind of someone who doesn't have anyone in his life and therefore feels lonely. But it's not that simple. The concept of loneliness is much more complex than that. Tony Warrens, professor of social gerontology at the University of Sheffield, says there are 2 different types of loneliness.
It's not just a question of living alone or being on one's own. People who study this suggest there are 2 types. Emotional loneliness, when the person has no one that they have a close attachment to, no one that regards them well or loves them or takes an interest in them. And the other type is social loneliness, when people have very few others that they do things with and they get bored because they don't have enough things to do with other people.
To be alone doesn't necessarily mean that someone feels lonely. These are 2 separate concepts, even though common sense says the opposite. Bernadette Murphy is a sociologist and says there are people who actually enjoy being on their own.
I think really it's about being alone when you don't want to be. So some people are happy being alone and have things to do that they choose to do separately. But I think if you want to be in contact with other people and something's preventing you, then you're likely to feel lonely.
But the definition of loneliness isn't the only complex topic. The other one, which has been discussed for the last decades by specialists in the field, is whether there is a direct relation between being lonely and the emergence of certain mental disorders. Joanna Burrell, clinical psychologist, says one thing can lead to the other, especially among elderly people, and long-term loneliness can cause, for example, depression.
We would expect that people don't manage the normal events of life as well if they don't have the experience of people around them who are supporting them socially. And over the longer term, we might see people who are potentially becoming low in mood. You might see them becoming increasingly depressed and all the symptoms and signs that come with depression. But you might also see them becoming increasingly anxious because the more that people are away from social contact, the more anxious they become about the prospect of social contact.
Back at the King's Centre Lunch Club, the situation is different, and no one knows what depression or be lonely means. Of the 14 elderly people, most of them over 70, like to be active, get out of their home, and enjoy a good meal.
Easy to eat. You want some gravy? Please, thank you. It's very nice.
Dot Brooks has been a volunteer at the club for the last 10 years. She admits loneliness can be a problem for the elderly, but says lunch clubs are a good way to reduce isolation.
They obviously lose physical health and sometimes their mental capacity deteriorates. I think that brings a sense of isolation as much as not seeing people, because it's hard to lose your health and strength no matter what age you are. And I think to have somebody that understands that and to have compassion and be with you in that helps relieve the isolation. I don't just see it as particularly being on your own a lot, because there are a lot of things that people can do.
The UK has hundreds of lunch clubs, just like this one in Sheffield, spread all over the country. But still, the number of lonely people is higher compared with other European countries. A study published by the think tank Demos and commissioned by WRVS has concluded that British elderly people are lonelier than those in Germany, Sweden and the Netherlands. The report has taken 3 months to get ready, and the research process was divided in 3 phases.
The first phase was we needed to identify the countries. So we did a literature review looking at what are the type of things we knew about old aging in those countries. So then the next phase was to identify which data sets were both accurate enough, but also is where the same questions are being asked to people in Sweden, Britain. Then we got to the stage of obviously the analysis of the data and came back with the initial drafts of the report for us to comment on.
This was Matthew Soemimo, Head of Public Policy from WRVS, who also says those 3 countries were chosen due to their similarities to Britain.
These are Northern European countries with similar history, similar types of economies to Britain. They're also countries which have similar levels of prosperity with Britain. But also we wanted to choose countries that are also our competitors in the modern economy. And therefore, if those countries are managing ageing more effectively in Britain, then that assists their greater competitiveness compared to us.
But with one of the strongest economies in the world and a well-developed social care system, why are elderly people lonelier in the UK comparing with these countries? For the sociologist Bernadette Murphy, the increasing poverty among older people in Britain is on the top of the reasons.
I think quite often people are moving further away from their parents or their other sort of close families. But I think the other reason is possibly around people's poverty. I think there are more older poor people in the UK than in other European countries. And one of the effects of poverty is that you haven't got the money to enable you to have the social contact.
Matthew Soemimo studied this topic for 3 months and have a different opinion. For him, British society is the one to blame for this situation.
As a society in Britain, we haven't invested in the types of cheap services at the community level allow people to meet others and to leave their own home. Another factor is other European Union countries have been more successful in giving older people whose health permits it opportunities to volunteer. So they're leaving their home, they're going out and meeting people, they're getting that sense of satisfaction and motivation that comes from making a contribution to their communities, and they are meeting other people.
With lunch over at King's Centre, it's time for games. The guests have 3 different options: dominoes, Scrabble, or a wide range of card games.
Did it help you by me putting down that 10? No, it helped me by you putting that down. Because I picked up the 2, you see. That was a big one.
Betty Horton is 72 and attends this kind of lunch clubs for more than 10. She says it is the best way to get out of a house and at the same time meet new people.
People enjoy going out, and I do 2 luncheon clubs a week. It gets me out. You're talking to somebody different, and it's nice. Because I find as you get older, a lot of the people that you used to know, they've either died or they're housebound, and you can't get to them and they can't get to you.
Barbara Stoppard is a bit older. She's 75, and even though she finds it important to come every week to the lunch club, she doesn't matter being on her own sometimes.
When I'm here, I'm fine, but I'm just as content to stop in my own flat with my own company. I don't get bored. I'm alone, but I'm not lonely. But I find something to do. I mean, I can play patience. I have various games. I do puzzle books. I just keep the grey matter turning over. But I like to be in company.
The government has described loneliness as one of society's biggest challenges in the 21st century. This year, Coalition has launched the Active at 60 program, a 1 million government grant program which gives funding to community groups in order to help people over 60 to keep active. This program is already closed, but according to the government, it was made available to 30 local authority areas across England. In another attempt to fight loneliness in the country, government created the Aging Well program, which is designed to support local authorities to improve their services for older people. But is this enough to fight a growing problem like loneliness? Psychologist Joanna Burrell doesn't think so. She says the creation of personalized groups only for lonely people would work better.
Self-help help groups can be a fantastic way for people to meet together with others who are experiencing similar difficulties and see that there are other people out there experiencing the same things. They can be great in terms of helping people to develop strategies and coping mechanisms for dealing with their difficulties.
On the other hand, Bernadette Murphy, sociologist, says the investment in this area should be higher and the fight should begin in the first place in people's mind.
I think it's partly there is a lack of resources for caring for older people, but also there seems to be an idea around that younger people who've got disabilities need to have social interaction and contact, so that's paid for, but it's rarely paid for older people. Somehow people seem to think that older people don't have the same need for social interaction as younger people, which is an ageist sort of stereotype, really.
At King Centre Lunch Club, it's time to go home after an afternoon of chatting, games and food. The 14 elderly people say goodbye for now, but next week they will all be together again. Loneliness is not a problem in their life. Unfortunately, more than 1 million Britons can't say the same, and the number is growing. Loneliness is a real problem of the modern societies, and the successful fight against it depends on each and every one of us. A smile, a 5-minute talk, or a simple phone call can be more important than we think.
Right, it's time to go.
Bye.